What's the haps? I'm Meroka, and I'm here to give you my professional gaming opinion on Long Gone Days. Long Gone Days is a game I had on my Steam wishlist for a long old while. One of those games that catches your attention, but by the time it launches, you don't remember why it caught your attention, or even what it was. So imagine my surprise when friend of the channel Alzarath, go check out his content, told me he had a spare copy of something on my wishlist that was about to launch, and did I want it? Absolutely. Just let me figure out what it is. It's a traditional turn-based RPG. A JRPG, if you like. The devs even call it as much, though I gather the term is falling out of favour, and the devs are Chilean, so it seems decidedly odd to call it a Chilean-Japanese RPG. You know what I mean anyway. It's some old school Final Fantasy stuff. Your heroes line up, the enemies line up, and you take turns playing slapsies. Except what you probably wouldn't expect from the genre is its modern military theme. You play Rourke, a soldier raised in a shadowy military organisation, raised from birth to be an expert sniper. And you absolutely line up to play slapsies with highly trained military veterans. If you can handle the spoilers, you end up on the run from your own organisation in the opening chapter after they order you to start committing war crimes during your first deployment. Right out the gate, you're left under no illusion that this is a game that's going to be touching on heavy themes. Whilst dealing with the horrors of war, you'll also become embroiled in a struggle against the nascent fascist political tendencies across Europe, leading to a military-led coup. Sadly, it never quite manages to deliver on these topics as well as it could, or indeed perhaps would maybe like to, because the whole thing is in tension with the format. It's a bit silly, a bit twee. It's all in this cutesy anime and pixel art style, which, don't get me wrong, looks great, I love the style, but it's in stark contrast to the modern warfare thing. You run around cities with your party of friends, you open loot crates, you do side quests for the locals, for which of course the main quest can gladly go on hold. What's that? A genocidal army is invading? Okay, well they'll have to wait while I collect all the newspaper clippings and see what's in that box on that rooftop. And that's to say nothing of the combat. It really is turn-based RPG slapsies, albeit with submachine guns instead of broadswords. Your squad tank enough lead to retile the roof of a church and shrug it off by scarfing down a few pastries. One of the baddies is shown early on as having a broken arm, and I don't know why he didn't just have a chocky bicky and get back to work. It does have quite a charming targeting system to tie into the combat. You can aim at different parts of your enemy to different effects. Body shots are likely to hit, but are where enemies are usually armoured. Headshots have a higher chance to miss, but do deal higher damage. And arm shots have a small chance to paralyse enemies for a couple of turns. However, I personally felt the chance to miss on a headshot wasn't so inconveniently high as to not be worth the risk, and the chance of paralysing on arm shots was sufficiently low that I ended up aiming for the head every single time. That then adds to the daftness though, because now you're beaning people in the head with a sniper rifle, unloading entire clips through the cranium, and they just carry on until they suffer critical existence failure. I've now spent days trying to figure out if they're trying to do something clever here. It's rare that you get ludonarrative dissonance so potent that you feel certain it must be intentional. They're doing something with this, right? It's a scathing satire on... what? It's a bold commentary about... something? Well, it probably says a lot about society. I will buy you a beer if you can explain this one to me, because I actually can't figure it out. It even gets gradually weirder as the story unfolds. It's in some respects true to its RPG roots, because the stakes are constantly escalating, right up to the point of a final, dramatic, climactic showdown with a big bad who's trying to take over the world for reasons. Who even has a final fucking form! What started out as feeling like a reasonably serious take on the real human consequences of conflict has spiraled so out of control that it's honestly not so far removed from a QAnon conspiracy theory. Albeit one where the fascists are the obvious baddies and not the woke globalist agenda. Although, thinking about it, by the time it's gone this far, the ludonarrative dissonance doesn't feel quite so stark. If this sounds like I didn't enjoy the game, nothing could be further from the truth. It's honestly genuinely good. It's bizarre, no doubt, but still very compelling. As RPGs go, it's really pretty well made. There's no random battles, you can see enemies on the map before you fight them. Sometimes you'll get the chance to bypass an enemy to avoid the fight, or to have a peaceful resolution. It feels like there's something of a missed opportunity there to do something in the vein of Undertale's pacifist and genocide endings, because the only consequence is less fighting, which is only useful if you don't like the combat. Even when I accidentally skipped a fight, I tended to go back and do it anyway because I wanted the loot. Again, in contrast with the game's anti-war message. Like, if our guy hates killing so much, give us a reward for not doing it. After each fight, you get choices of loot. It's often healing items versus restoring skill points, but nice to have that extra decision to make about how best to allocate your resources. There's a leveling system of sorts, but it's heavily hidden behind the scenes. I didn't pay close enough attention to my team stats to notice whether it was connected to the story specifically or to the fights, but your numbers do go up over time, and you'll mainly only really be aware of it when your crew learn new abilities. The real practical effect of all this is that there's no grind. You'll never be over or under-leveled for any fight. You're always exactly as leveled as the devs would like you to be. Personally, I never found any of the fights especially challenging, with bosses erring on the bullet-spongy side of balance rather than particularly unique fights. It's self-remarkable in a world of walking bullet sponges. But I also never found anything frustrating or that outstayed its welcome, which, when I'm really mostly here for the story, feels to me like they got it just about right. To keep things from ever getting too stale, it fairly rhythmically alternates between running around a city story bits and fighting a building full of baddies combat bits. Each time you move on to the next chapter, you'll find yourself in a new country where you don't speak the language, and they don't pull any punches here, at least for a little while. NPCs will straight up talk to you in Russian, German, and Polish. Unless you, the player of the game, speak those languages, or at least have the patience to transcribe it into Google Translate, you aren't gonna know what they're saying. I should stress I do not speak those languages. I've got some mostly forgotten high school French, but that's about it. I don't for a moment think there's anything especially interesting or critical in there. I presume mostly flavor text. I don't think anything else could ever really make sense from a game design perspective, but I think it's a super cool and fun bonus for multilingual players. Once you've bumbled around each area for a bit, you'll acquire a bilingual party member, who it's sort of taken as a given will translate literally everyone and everything for you. A little flag bar text will let you know it's been translated. There's also a morale mechanic that I'd potentially argue is integrated into the story maybe a little too well. Early on, you're told that certain actions will affect your team's morale. Your decisions in the story, and more often you're choosing to complete side quests, will result in a little smiley face popping up over a character. Or a sad one if it didn't go so well. What does this do? No, I'm genuinely asking, I never figured it out. I've seen comments from the devs saying it changes the outcome of plot lines and unlocks new quests. When I say it's too well integrated, I mean I honestly don't know what I unlocked or changed through morale. On the one hand, this can be viewed as a positive, that these changes flow naturally and seamlessly into the story. On the other hand, I'm a gamer, dammit, and I want to know what my numbers are and if I could have done better. But I get it. In a game about human relationships, assigning numerical values to emotions detracts from things somewhat. It's a perfectly valid criticism that I've heard levelled at the dating sim genre, that reducing emotions down to a mere numbers game is so far removed from romance and dating as to be antithetical to the whole experience. If you can suspend your disbelief enough over the ludonarrative dissonance, and boy does it take some suspending, you might want to look at renting a crane, then the game as a whole is really quite compelling. Maybe in streamlining the RPG experience it takes away some of the elements that might appeal to the purists, but to me it felt quite fresh and iterative. It's also the correct game length, which is to say one an adult with a job can comfortably fit into their life. It's like 10 to 15 hours, which will mostly be dependent on your reading speed. I will continue to go to bat for bite-sized experiences. Long Gone Days is out now on all the things. You can find it on PC, Mac, Xbox, PS5 and Switch for about £20 to £25 depending on your platform and region. I'm very happy to recommend it. Thank you very much for watching. If you're wondering why there's been less videos, lately I've been producing a podcast about The Simpsons called Mole Man in the Morning. I'm co-hosting one about Arnold Schwarzenegger called All for Arnold. If you've missed my dulcet tones, you should definitely give those a listen. Available wherever all good podcasts can be found.